was just right for the immediate. Jeez.
I'd like to call to order the Vicksburg Village Council meeting of December 20th. It's now 7 o'clock. Will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll observe a moment of silence. At this time, Manager Mallory, will you take roll call, please?
Yes, roll call for Village of Vicksburg Council meeting December 20th, 2021. Trustee Olson.
Here.
Trustee Wagner.
Here.
Trustee Reister.
Here.
Trustee Holmes.
Here.
Trustee Merrill.
Here.
President Pro Temp Keller.
Here.
And President Frisbee is excused.
Thank you. We have an agenda in front of us. Are there any corrections or additions to the agenda?
Yes, will be deleting 10B. We're going to gather more information and present into the future for the council. There is going to, and we always knew there'd be excavation work around the DPW building, but I want some further information from the engineers. So ask that be taken off the agenda.
Okay. Is there any other additions or changes by council?
Jim, do we have the correspondence to add in?
The correspondence from the resident?
Yes.
Yeah, it's part of the packet. So the email correspondence is part of the packet, as well as estimates and communication, my replies.
Everybody set? With that being said, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as changed?
Trustee Wagner, I make that motion.
Trustee Olson, I second.
Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Wagner with the motion, seconded by Trustee Olson. Trustee Merrill.
Yes.
Trustee Holmes.
Yes.
Trustee Reister.
Yes.
Trustee Wagner.
Yes.
Trustee Olson.
Yes.
President Pro Temp Keller.
Yes. Okay, item 6, we have scheduled appearances. We will be having Sherry Skadrowski, Firefly Preservation, and Todd Walsh, National Register of Historic Preservation Office. That's going to be listed under 10A. Are there any other scheduled appearances at all?
No, sir.
Okay. Moving on, public officials, none I see. Are there any calling in at all, or?
No, we're testing that to make sure that we can do that. We're looking probably at targeting January 20th, February 3rd time frame to bring in front of the council to do a hybrid, and we're also ensuring that it still is allowed for citizens to be able to call in and make comments during this time from home.
Okay, thank you. We're now moving to citizens' comments. This is for agenda and non-agenda items. Citizens will have 4 minutes to discuss any topic that is either agenda or non-agenda, or make a comment on them. They have to list their full name and their home address. Is there anybody that wishes to do so? Moving along. Item number 9, approval of general consent agenda. We have the minutes from the regular council meeting of December 6th. We have the warrant report for a total of $468,753.85. We have event rental requests. We have the Rotary Charter Night of June 25th, 2022, the Pavilion. And we have Bike Friendly Kalamazoo on the 17th and 18th of September of 2022 for the Pavilion and the Gazebo and Grounds. And I see there are no correspondence.
I would like to put on the record and probably see what Trustee Wagner was inquiring about. The communication is from Mr. Franklin Morgan, all the accompanying emails and the follow through. So that's the communication we talked about earlier.
Excuse me, Mr. Keller?
Yes.
Just a quick question. Just for my edification, during the citizens' comments, if for any reason a council member has a point they would like to make, instead of waiting for their time at the end, is there precedent, or are they allowed to talk during that time period? I realize it's set up for the citizens of the community, but obviously we all are citizens of the community, so I'm just kind of looking to better understand.
Under the council meeting procedure rules, which I have, I mean, obviously you guys set the parameters, but it was designed for citizens' time to comment on agenda and non-agenda items with council time at the end of the meeting.
So if a council member has a non-agenda item they would like to bring, because I've heard in the past that it's been presented both by council as well as you, that, you know, that it hasn't been brought up, or an issue needs to be brought up by council, that would be the time potentially outside, obviously, of council time. But if we want to have a public discussion amongst all the council members, would it be at that time then that a council member would bring up an issue then for discussion?
From my understanding of what you were saying, I would say yes. If you're looking for a discussion for a formal agenda item in the future, there would be a spelled out process of that. Would start with like a request to the president, but I believe under Robert's Rules of Order, to place something on the agenda, there's 3 of the council members would be in agreement. But I've never, in my 5 years, always if a council member has asked something to be on the agenda, usually the president puts it on the agenda.
Okay. Now, and I'm sorry, I'm not trying to continue this on. It's just kind of a better understanding, because I've heard several times. A good example was Trustee Olson once referenced a village asset, and he suggested that it be sold. And my comment is, what if another council member wanted to discuss that comment that he made? Would it be appropriate for the council member to make a motion that he would like additional consideration be given on this, and then subsequently that would enable the council members to talk, because this is the only time that we ever get together
Yeah,
to have
that would, during council comments would be the time. It's just as like a business meeting governed by the Open Meeting Act is the only thing. If a person on the board brings up a topic and another council member wants clarification or time to even say, hey, I think we ought to go deeper into that.
Okay.
And then, you know, that would be the time in kind of the example offered to say, hey, I'd like to see that maybe on the next council meeting to talk about that topic.
Okay. So it doesn't have to be like a formal motion. It could
No.
just be, okay, great.
And just so the council's clarified, the reason why we don't do this during citizens' comments is because it is their time to comment. If we engage in a back and forth of questions and answers, we open up Pandora's box a little bit. It gets off task also, but it also eats into their 4 minutes of what they have allotted. So because we don't yield time, we don't, you know, whereas you're in a regular legislature, you'd be yielding time to a speaker or whatever. So that's why. I mean, it's this is our only time we meet for the business purpose, and as Trustee Holmes pointed out, you know, when we should bring those up, it's on our time. When the citizens want to speak, then it's their time. So, correct. And I think the citizens get frustrated sometimes because they ask us questions directly. We don't answer them. We don't answer them for a reason, because we don't want to get into that back and forth, and because then it gets off track pretty quickly. So,
And I appreciate that, President Pro Tem Keller, because and the reason I ask is because this really is the only time that as a group we meet. I mean, we can talk individually, but we can't have a quorum outside of this. So if we want to bring an idea, thought, or a suggestion and kind of talk amongst one another, this is it. This hour and a half that we meet. And so that's why I was just kind of looking for, what is that process? We obviously can talk to the village manager or any of us individually, but again, in the environment that we're in here collectively, I thought it would be helpful for all of us to know, hey, if we have an idea, how would that idea then be discussed amongst us, is all I was looking for.
Yeah, and so we're clear, the president sets the agenda. So usually Tim and I meet on Friday mornings to finalize it. I send them what's been discussed, a draft one before that. We meet in person, usually on Friday mornings. And the same thing was with President Adams. We'd meet and he'd say, yep, let's go forward with that agenda. So I think, and it doesn't even have to be a topic. It might be one that you just want to bring up. My suggestion would be request that of the village president, and not knowing the requester to put pressure on. I don't know of any that hasn't been put on the agenda that's been requested to the president.
So the suggestion is then to contact President Frisbee in advance and ask that it be
Yeah.
put on the agenda?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Or bring it up in a meeting like you're doing now. Hey, I'd like this topic. What does everyone else think if we talk about this topic? Doesn't have to be tonight, but because it might ask staff to look at the pros and cons or whatever it is. It's tough talking the hypotheticals.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
We all set?
All set, thanks.
Okay. We have the general consent agenda. I am going to look for a motion to approve as amended, adding in the email correspondence on line item D.
Okay.
Are you looking for a motion, Chris?
I am looking for a motion to approve as amended.
I make a motion to approve the general consent as amended.
And Merrill supporting.
Is there any discussion on that? Can we have a roll call vote, please, Jim?
Yes, motion made by Trustee Holmes, supported by Trustee Merrill. Trustee Wagner.
Yes.
Trustee Reister.
Yes.
Trustee Holmes.
Yes.
Trustee Merrill.
Yes.
Trustee Olson.
Yes.
President Pro Temp Keller.
Yes. Okay, we're at bullet point 10 on the agenda. It's Village Council action items. We'll now have a presentation by Todd Walsh of the National District Program, followed by Sherry Satronsky. I'm really killing that, so sorry. Updating status of Vicksburg's specific nomination. I believe Jackie Coney is going to introduce the presenters.
Thank you. Is this on? It is on? Okay. So you may remember that Chris Moore's first and primary goal related to the mill was to save that gorgeous historic landmark and get it on the National Register of Historic Places to help it ensure that it would survive at least another 100 years as a symbol of the might, craft, and vitality of Vicksburg's and the region's manufacturing prowess. Any place can have new buildings, but few have treasures like the mill. Downtown is an amazing asset, too, one that we don't want to lose and that we, along with others, have devoted significant time and energy to preserving as well. About 2.5 years ago, Chris and Paper City Development hired Sherry Skadronsky of Firefly Preservation to evaluate what parts of the village might have a chance of being approved as a National Historic District. After hundreds of hours of research and pounding the pavement, taking photos, and talking to residents and the Historical Society, Sherry submitted our nomination to Todd Walsh at the State Historic Preservation Office. Both are here to share more about the process. Not only is being recognized as a National Historic District a source of pride for a community, as well as a marketing tool to attract visitors and new residents, it also provides access to historic tax credits, a powerful lever that helps make preserving and restoring buildings more achievable for all building owners. We're excited about our progress toward reaching this designation and the potential for the historic and historic Vicksburg to be official. Certainly this effort and the hope that building owners preserve our historic assets does not mean that we're stuck in the past, though. The goal is to continue to be forward-looking while leveraging and celebrating our historic treasures. What a joy it is for me personally to live in a place that understands the value of and works to preserve history. I think Todd Walsh, the National Historic District Coordinator for the State Historic Preservation Office, is next up to speak in more detail about the program. I'd like to thank Todd for all of his assistance in this process. He's got an overflowing inbox in basket, but has always found time to answer questions, come speak at meetings, and just help however he could. And then Sherry will share more details about our district. I can't thank her enough either for being so patient with my many questions, braving the elements to walk every street in this village, and taking photos of each historic asset. This is another exciting step for Vicksburg, and I thank you for making time for us tonight.
Todd, if you want to go ahead and begin, you're on a big screen in the room, and you'll pop up when you start talking.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you, Village Council, for giving me a few minutes to explain us a little bit about the National Register program and the National Register process. I want to only take a few minutes of your time this evening. And first I want to make sure everyone can hear me okay. Wonderful. Thank you very much. I'm going to start my presentation now. It's only a few slides, and then I will turn it over to Sherry. But first, I want to say most of the credit, 99% of the credit goes to Sherry. She's the one that did all the work on this, and she did a tremendous job. And it was a pleasure, as always, working with her. So thank you, Sherry, and thank you, everyone.
Todd, did you want slides to be seen by the council?
If so, that would be terrific.
Okay, I believe I can make you the host, and then you'll have to just share your screen, okay?
Okay. I see that can come up now. Thank you.
Yep, and then when you're done, you just click on to make Sherry the host if she has a screen share to do, and then she can toss it back to me. So.
Okay. Okay. So I guess the first question that you might be wondering is what is the National Register of Historic Places? We heard a little bit about that just a few minutes ago, so I'll go over these. It is the federal government's official list of the nation's places worthy of preservation, but it's also a federal program that is administered by the states. It's a planning tool for state, local, and federal governments. It's a tool for promoting places and communities in our shared history. It's a tool for economic and community development, and it's a means of celebrating local and state history. And anyone can go to the two websites that I've noted there, the National Park Service's National Register website and our own National Register web pages. For more information, you're always welcome to contact me as well. The process for listing a property in the National Register of Historic Places goes through a number of steps. And this process can take anywhere from typically several months to a couple of years, depending on the various aspects of that nomination. It begins with a survey of the entire area. Then we take that data that we collect and we evaluate and identify the historic resources, what we call contributing resources. There are some that don't contribute to the historic significance of that property. Those are non-contributing resources. The next step is to prepare the forms and the maps and the photographs that go along that make up the nomination. It's a package of materials. That's sent to our office for evaluation. There's a period of draft and revision that goes through several cycles of that process. Then we go to the State Historic Preservation Review Board. That's coming up in January. You're welcome to attend in person or via Zoom. The nomination package then goes to the National Park Service, where it's reviewed by historians at the National Park Service, and ultimately it is listed in the National Register. We are presently at this phase right here. After this meeting, we'll be waiting until January 28th. That is the date of the next State Historic Preservation Review Board meeting. After that meeting, my expectation is that the board will approve the nomination as is. We will get those materials prepared and transmitted to the Park Service. Once the Park Service receives that nomination package, they have 45 days in which to evaluate that nomination. They can send it back to us for a clarification or additional information, or they can approve it, or they can reject it outright and say this just isn't an eligible property. That last one is not the case here. That won't happen. If anything, there would be technical corrections or some additional documentation. But I expect it to be listed on the first go-around. At the time of the board meeting, I mentioned that you can attend in person or online. By going to the website you see there, this is what the page looks like. It's a long page, so I just split it up into two. The blue bar is the top of the page, and the little boxes on the right-hand side are the bottom of the page. But there'll be links there. Anyone is welcome to attend. Feel free to do so. Once it goes to, I said it'll go to Washington DC. This is the Department of Interior building, a little visual effect, where it's evaluated. There are several aspects of a nomination that gets reviewed. There are technical aspects and there's substantive aspects. The technical side of it can be simple things like making sure the appropriate boxes are checked. It can be making sure that dates are correct and that the boundaries that we said that we wrote in the nomination match the boundaries on the map. Then there are deeper substantive issues. Do the arguments make sense? Did we present the information? Did we propose an argument and then support it with the historical facts and other information that we put in the nomination? Are the boundaries justified? Are the boundaries that we drew justified? Did we address historic integrity? Did we explain any aspects of historic integrity that are not present? Did we explain those? All sorts of things like that. So they do a very thorough review within that 45-day period. Then it's listed. It's time for a celebration. I look forward to seeing Vicksburg Historic District listed in the National Register. It's well deserved. It's a beautiful city, and you should all be very proud of this. So lastly, the results. What does it mean? And we heard a little bit about this, and that's exactly right. That the biggest thing probably is the economic development incentives. There is presently the Federal Historic Preservation Tax Credit Program. We are working through the rulemaking process of the State Historic Preservation Tax Credit Program, and that should be available within the next, I would say, 6 months to a year. We just finished up our last rule commenting meeting. That's going over to the state agency that approves that rule package. Once those are published, it goes on through the next steps and should be soon. So there will be 2 historic preservation tax credit programs. Sometimes other granting or funding programs require National Register designation for funding. Sometimes they consider it a bonus to be listed in the National Register. It just depends on the program that's being used. Then it also provides consideration for the effects of federal projects and federally funded projects on historic resources. And the best example of this, and the easiest example I can think of, is that MDOT wanted to put in a roundabout in the middle of town. That project would come to us for review for a consultation period in which we can comment and try to minimize the impacts on historic properties in that downtown area. Something that you might be interested in is that the National Register does not limit what private property owners can do to their buildings. It does not, nor does it protect historic resources from being altered or even being demolished. The National Register of Historic Places puts no burden on a property or property owner. Where there is if you make use of a tax credit program. In that case, the rules of the tax credit program will apply. And those rules necessarily rely on the historic character and historic integrity of the properties in question. It does not automatically result in local historic district ordinances or local historic districts, which do have a protective and enforcement mechanism. It doesn't lead to automatic funding. It doesn't lead to, it doesn't affect the sale of anything. Really, most property owners, if they choose not to engage in the National Register of Historic Places parts of it, or or the tax credit parts of it, will notice no difference day to day. It is an honorific program, and it celebrates the history of the properties and the significance of the properties through that honorific mechanism. And that is my brief presentation. And we can either turn it over to Sherry, or I'd be happy to take questions.
Any council members have any questions for Mr. Walsh? We've got one here.
Ryan, if you could.
Thank you all very much.
I was just going to ask if there are the number of buildings or properties or lands that have been identified as potential that would qualify under this? Is that what you, I'm getting ahead of myself, which is normal, so.
So I had a hard time. So did you say there were infill buildings? Is that?
No, I was just asking if there were buildings already identified or what the number would be, but I was told that that's what Sherry was going to talk with us about.
Yeah.
So,
Yes, I don't have that. Yes, hopefully she does. I don't have that information, but if neither of us do, we will happily get that to you. It is contained in the form, and that's a very important aspect of the nomination form itself. Sherry, I'll turn it to you.
Okay, let's see if I can share. Todd, can you make me the host and then I'll share my screen? Can everyone hear me okay while we're getting organized here? Okay, great. Okay, so as Jackie and Todd have said, I'm going to talk about your district specifically. So first, I'll introduce myself a little bit. I think I know some of you. I recognize some names during your roll call, and I met many residents while doing field work and documenting buildings, and this has been a really enjoyable project for me. You guys have a really pleasant community. Everyone's been very friendly and welcoming, and I really enjoyed getting to chit chat with people about their houses or businesses and buildings. And so I thank you for that. And I'm a historical consultant, and what that means is that I specialize in history, research, and architecture. I do, of course, National Register nominations, but also tax credit applications, architectural survey, house research just for private property owners. I do a little bit of master planning and sort of anything related to history, buildings, and research, documentation. That's the sort of work that I do. I live in Chelsea, so I'm not too far from you guys. I appreciate the virtual option. It's not a long drive, but it is for a short presentation. So thanks for accommodating that today. And we'll go ahead and dive into the nomination. There are 4 criteria under which you can have a property nominated to the National Register. And by property, I mean it could be a single building. It could be something like a farm with a bunch of outbuildings. That would be considered a single property. Or in this case, the district itself is considered a property under the definitions of the National Register program. And so these are the 4 criteria for which you can be significant. Criterion A is an event demonstrating broad patterns of history. And so pretty much any historical topic would fall under this category. You might have commerce, industry, recreation, education, civil rights, social history, any of those things, and many, many more would fall under that category. Criterion B is association with a person who is significant in history. So these are your obvious Mount Vernons and things like that. There are also like an architectural studio for, Khan Studio would be a good example, things like that. Criterion C is architectural design or construction, which is not just architectural style, but it can also be the way that something was built. It could be a particularly prolific or important architect that designed the building. It could be an old-timey way of putting a building together that we don't really see anymore and hasn't really survived. So it can be both style, architect, and it can also be construction methods. And then criterion D is archaeological potential. And we say potential because we don't necessarily want to actually dig up everything that might have important things to tell us from history or prehistory. And so things can also be listed for their potential to provide information about the way people have lived over time. So the Vicksburg Historic District is significant under Criterion A for community planning, under Criterion A for commerce, and under Criterion C for architecture. And I'm going to go through each of these one by one. And our period of significance is 1867 to 1971. And with a district like this, you tend to start the period of significance with the earliest standing building. And the end point is usually some sort of drop off in construction for whatever reason that may be. Maybe the primary employer closed and development stopped. Maybe the railroads left and development stopped, or there's usually some sort of event. The highway comes through, 12 miles away, and development in the town stops, or something like that. And so you tend to see sort of a drop off in construction. And it has to be 50 years old or older. So we're going into the early 70s now, which is sort of strange to start thinking of things from the 70s as historic. We're also comfortable with ranch houses and split levels. They're hard to think of as historically significant, but they are. And we have a little bit of that in this district as well. So you guys know the history, but Vicksburg was settled by European Americans in the 1830s when John Vickers came and built his mill on the Portage Creek. He was actually a squatter on the Nottawasepe Reservation, and the reservation was closed soon after he came, and he was able to officially claim the land. And then more Europeans and European Americans came, and pretty soon we had a little village. And this map is not quite the oldest map. The oldest plat is from 1849. This one I think is from the 1870s. But this little section here in the middle is the original plat of the town, and then all of these little additions to the north, northeast, and then even Mill Street's sort of different, but when you get down to the south, they all sort of follow the same grid layout. And so that's why the district is significant for community planning. It was intentionally laid out in these tidy little blocks. You had narrow lots and wide streets downtown, so that accommodated commercial buildings and traffic flow. And then as you move south into the residential areas, you see the lots get a lot wider. There are alleys added. There are narrower streets, not as many sidewalks. And that is to better, of course, accommodate houses and yards. And then this grid plan was just extended as each of the additions came on. So this core, this original 1849 layout forms the basis of the historic district. So that is why it includes both commercial and residential areas. And that's it for that. Okay, and then the next one is commerce. By 1880, you had the benefit of crisscrossing railroads in Vicksburg, which of course brought tons of people through as travelers, but it also helped people get here to live here, to open businesses, to move into the rural areas nearby and buy farms. And so the village really grew pretty rapidly there in the late 1800s and early 1900s. A lot of the downtown buildings were rebuilt from frame to brick during that time. You see construction slow down, of course, during the Depression, and then there's another period of sort of a burst of growth after World War II, which is pretty common to most towns, that pattern of growth, depression, and growth again. And so throughout its history, the commercial core has had all of the shops and services that people need. And most of those buildings remain standing. And so the district is significant for commerce too. So you have the hotels. We'll just look at some cool pictures for a minute here. You have your grocery stores. You had hardware stores. You had City Hall, which actually kind of moved around a lot. This is just one of the buildings that City Hall lived in for a while. There were department stores, the newspaper office. Of course, this is where the Vicksburg commercial is. You have banks. So this is getting into the mid-century modern sort of architecture. Same with the post office. And so you can see how development continues through the entire period of significance. And so you see the buildings containing these services and businesses from the late 1800s all the way up through the mid 1900s. And these businesses serve not only the residents in town, but also the farmers that live around the village and travelers coming through on the railroads. And so Vicksburg was really an important trading center for this part of Kalamazoo County, but also for this section of southwestern Michigan. And the district is also significant for architecture. We see sort of the patterns of changing style over time, and most, if not all, of the major styles are represented within the district. The oldest house is this one. It is so cute. It's one of my favorites in the whole town. This is your only Greek Revival example. So this is 1867. You have a couple Gothic Revival in both residential and public buildings in the church. Gothic Revival, of course, is really popular for religious architecture. It's not as common in residential, though, so it's nice to see this example here. Italianate is very common in the Midwest in downtowns, and you have some really beautiful examples in Vicksburg. Also very common for houses, and we see a few different forms. This box with arched windows is probably one of the most recognizable. My other favorite house in town is this beautiful Second Empire. This is the only example of Second Empire, but it's a really lovely Victorian era style. A lot of really beautiful Queen Anne houses in Vicksburg. You guys have a really nice collection of well-kept, well-loved Queen Anne homes in town. This is just a couple examples. There are a few that are sort of transitional Queen Anne colonial, so they're not quite as fussy as the true Queen Anne's, but also a very pretty style. You have colonial revival in residential and in public buildings with the school administration building. A few Dutch colonial revival with those gambrel roof lines. A couple of craftsmen. We're getting into the early 1900s styles here now. So craftsman is really popular into the 30s, but there wasn't a whole lot of growth in Vicksburg during that time. So we don't see a lot of craftsmen, but there are a few early ones like this 1915 example. You have some vernacular buildings. So these are not quite as highly styled. They're sort of pared down versions of other things. So with commercial buildings, you might see a decorative cornice and a simple storefront. In this case, it's an updated 50s or 60s storefront. And with houses, you tend to see these traditional forms. This is a sort of gable front and wing, and but not a lot of ornamentation or high style detailing on these. Getting into the mid-century styles, you have a few minimal traditionals. This is a style that comes after World War II, and so it's very practical and very simple. It's characterized by not having a lot of ornamentation, and sort of reflects, the post-war feeling. A few ranch houses, some nice ranch houses down on the south end of the district with the long, low forms and picture windows. Some really interesting and, in my opinion, very cool modern buildings in Vicksburg. Also, I really like the middle school. I got my steps in the day that I photographed it, that's for sure, but it's a very cool building. And the Fire Authority building is also a very cool building. And then the period of significance goes up to 1971, and that picks up this modern house down on Highway Street at the very, very south end of the district. So just, Todd talked about this a little bit, but it's important, so I'm gonna talk about it as well. A little about what the program is and isn't. This is an honorary designation. It is not regulatory. There is no historic district commission that comes with us. And they're just completely different programs. Local districts are zoning overlays, and that is why they have regulation. They have completely different goals, and one does not lead to the other. It does help determine eligibility for financial incentive programs like the tax credits that we've talked about. It doesn't require an owner to participate in any of those. If they are completely separate programs, it is 100% a property owner's choice to participate or not. And so all of the requirements that come with the tax credit program belong to the tax credit program, not to the National Register. So they are completely different, and there's no expectation or requirement that you would have to participate in any of those programs. It does allow a community to use the National Register listing to market your town and to encourage tourism. We've all been to cute little downtowns that have their little historic district sign when you come in, and or they have their brochure about come to our shopping in our National Register district or what have you. So it's definitely a marketing tourism tool. It does not provide any public access to private property. It does not mean that anybody has any right to ask to see your house or the inside of your house or walk into the church or any of those things. So there is no access to private property that comes with being listed on the National Register. So what's next? When we submit the National Register packet, it's really great to have letters of support, and I see that as part of your agenda. And I thank you for the opportunity to talk with you about the district and talk about a letter of support. Those letters go to the State Historic Preservation Office. They go to Todd, and then they are shared with the State Review Board, and then they are forwarded on to the National Park Service with the rest of the nomination. And they're not really a requirement, but it makes everybody feel good to know that we're all on the same page, that everybody's in the loop about what's happening, understands what the program is, what this means for the town, and that people are supportive of having the district listed. Property owners within the district, if you own a business or a home or attend church or school or whatever within the district boundary, you are also welcome to submit a letter of support for the district. Again, those all go to Todd. And if anybody has questions about that, feel free to ask me. I'll put my contact information up here in a second, or Todd, and we're happy to help answer questions about that. Like Todd said, the next thing is the State Review Board meeting on January 28th. If you need help finding the link for that, please let Todd or I know. We're happy to direct you to that. And I will present a similar version of this presentation. I only get 5 to 7 minutes with them, so it's much faster. But I will do a presentation similar to this at that meeting. And the board will discuss, make suggestions, ask questions, and if they have any revisions, then I'll make those following that meeting. Todd will then send it on to the National Park Service for review and final listing. And like he said, the Park Service has 45 days to ask for changes. reject it or accept it. I would expect them to accept it. They usually wait until day 45, and then they let us know that they've done that. And I get notified, and I think Jim will get a notification of that also, and Jackie. There are potential future projects. I drove around the entire town and everything within the village limits, and things like the Sunset Elementary School, the depot. There's a really great 60s, 70s, maybe it goes into the early 80s neighborhood on the sort of the northwest side of town that would be worth keeping an eye on. And so you do have other things that could be eligible for the National Register. And if you're ever interested in chatting about that in greater detail, I took copious notes. And so I'm happy to talk about that down the road if you're interested in that. But I do think you have other important and eligible historic resources in Vicksburg. This is how to reach me. Feel free to call, text, or email any questions that you might have. If you're interested in, seeing the draft nomination or just the entry for your own property, I'm happy to share those things. I have, research and historic photos that I've collected. I'm happy to share. I'm happy to answer questions. So please reach out at any time. And if y'all have any questions about the presentation, please let me know.
Sherry, can you hear me? Hi, it's Trustee Holmes. Question for you. The map that's in the handout that we have at the back of it, it has your name on it, so obviously it's part of what you've done. Just to clarify, is this map, is it based upon the 4 historical areas of recognition that you identified? And so as you went through the village, you went through the entire village, and what you mapped out is those areas that qualify based upon the parameters that you laid out in your presentation. Is that correct?
Yeah. So when you do a whole town like this, you're almost always going to have commerce, and you're almost always going to have architecture. And I added community development and planning because the village was so clearly and intentionally platted in that grid layout very, 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 very early. It was Vickers himself who did that. And the village has kept that layout and then extended it to all of your additions over time. And so since the area within that sort of original mapped area is so intact and has such good integrity, that is why I selected that area or identified that area for the district. I also looked at the neighborhood. Well, I looked at the whole town, but the one that really sticks in my mind is the neighborhood immediately northeast of downtown, which also has many beautiful, well-loved and well-kept homes that are very historically intact, have great integrity. But in general, that part of town has a lot more changes too, and overall didn't have the same level of integrity. So that's why that part wasn't included, and I went with that original platted area with the community development area of significance.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions?
No, but I would just like to say very well done. I mean, that was a great presentation, and I know some of the comments I've heard throughout the village as this has been kind of coming up to this point was that people were worried about having rules or regulations imposed on their properties, and I'm glad to see that the research I've done as well comes out to the same, is that there are no restrictions imposed, and it's honorific at the national level. So, yeah, I'm thinking it's a pretty cool program, and this is definitely a lot of work. It's really neat to see the variety that we really have in the village, the amount of history, the length, and intentional, planning that was put into it. I mean, even 150 years ago that we're still continuing to this day, so it's very neat.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, let me say, there are 220 contributing buildings and 61, 61 non-contributing. And the non-contributing ones, I have a 2-year-old in case you can't tell. So the non-contributing buildings are ones that either fall outside the period of significance or have been altered and don't retain the level of integrity necessary to kind of put them in their own time. So if you can't look at the building and have a sense of when it was built, that means it doesn't have the historic integrity. And so there are only 61 out and 200 compared to 220 that are contributing. And that includes all of the little historic garages and carriage houses and all of those kinds of things too. All of those are included in the district as well. So you had asked that question about numbers. I hadn't put it in the presentation, but I looked it up real quick for you. So I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions?
I just had a question. At this stage, it sounds like this is hopefully going to get approved. How important is it to send a letter of support about the historic district? Is that crucial?
So we try to have one so if it's an individual property, from the property owner, and if it's a town like this or a district like this, we try to get it from the community leadership, which in this case would be you guys. And what that does is it tells the SHPO staff, it tells the State Review Board, it tells the National Park Service that you guys are aware and involved in this project and that you do support it. And it isn't necessary, it can be listed without that, but it sort of checks the box that we have been working with the community to do this thing. And part of the reason for that is that anybody can submit a nomination to the National Register. So, my husband could pick one of your houses and submit a nomination for it. And so by having that letter of support, it just shows that everybody's involved and everybody's in the loop, and that and it conveys that support. Thank you. Not that my husband would do that. He's not a historian, so don't worry.
We're shaking in our boots here.
Are there any other questions? We'd like to thank both speakers for giving the presentation. It was very, very informative, very concise. We appreciate it. Appreciate your time tonight. I know the holidays are here, so it's busy for everybody. So thank you very much. Jackie, thank you for the presentation, for presenting them. What is staff's recommendation on this?
It would be our recommendation. We're looking for support from the council with a formal vote, and then we draft a letter to be able to be prepared to send to the state. One of the, we were waiting, the letter I provided today at the meeting, we actually received today in the office. So we were kind of waiting for that letter from SHPO to arrive. But that's what we would recommend in our requesting is council support for staff to articulate a letter of support for this process from the Village of Vicksburg.
Jim, would it be helpful if all of us signed that letter?
Yep, it could be. We have both the January 3rd council meeting that we could present the draft of the letter for final approval and signatures of everyone, if that's how you'd like to do it, or those in attendance. I don't know who's going to be.
Yeah, I would like to sign the letter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that because your house is on the historical?
No, I just think
Mike, please.
Yeah, Mike's on. So it's staff's recommendation that we authorize them to draft a letter of support from the Village of Vicksburg for the National Historic District process, and have that draft available at the first meeting in January, or the second one if possible so that we all can sign that. What is the pleasure of the council?
This is Trustee Wagner, and I move to approve a letter of support for Vicksburg's nomination into the National Register of Historic District.
Trustee Holmes, I support.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Is there any discussion on this? Okay. We can take a voice vote on this. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you again very much. We appreciate you coming tonight.
And if you can make me the host, I'll be able to end this and. Hopefully. All right. I think we'll.
I don't know about the rest of the council, but I'll never walk through this town again the way I used to after that presentation. That's really neat to know the various forms of houses that we have, and I just thought it was basically someone's unique, style when they built it. So it's kind of cool.
Gail and I were having discussions because obviously the east side of the town she spoke about, there are several homes over there that are in the 150-year-old range, mine being one of them. But there are a lot of changes in the neighborhood, so that kind of does it. So moving along, we are skipping item B for council action items, and we are going to C, which is South County Fire Authority budget recommendations. Manager Mallory, will you give us an update on this, please?
Yes, I was asked to provide a recommendation, and we're going to leave the big screen up a second on the South Kalamazoo County Fire Authority budget. I had multiple emails that went to the administrator of South Kalamazoo County Fire Authority requesting information, including copies of a purchasing policy, as well as capital expenditure limits, policies, documentation. I received minutes from a 2013 meeting that they had, as well as a couple copies of their bylaws. But so I attended their virtual meeting last week, and the Schoolcraft Township supervisor indicated they had concerns, the Village of Schoolcraft. Specific to staff's concerns, why I asked in the meeting, they acknowledged that they do not have a purchasing policy, which I found very, very troubling as a member in the community. Don't have an identified capital expenditure level. When you look at the documents that are provided, it was 3 pages. They lead to more questions than answers for sure. I've articulated those concerns to this council in both the documentation, lack of detail, how they came up with pricing, how this was even formulated. And I would be in no position to, for myself to stand behind work like this, and therefore I will not be recommending. I would recommend that the council table it. I'll document a detailed communication to the South Kalamazoo County Fire Authority, expecting specific questions and details to be provided for this municipality, or at least the staff, to gain support. But it was rather disappointing, and I'll just leave it at that.
Any questions for Manager Mallory?
Trustee Olson, let me remind the council, first of all, that this is the same basic budget that's been come forward before the council over the years. dating back to when Bill Adams, village president, was head of, or on the South County Fire Authority board. So, I hate to say it's been the same thing over and over again, but if Bill Adams and Don Alsh can approve that budget over the years, obviously they never saw anything wrong with it. Also, too, to Mr. Mallory, I'm glad you signed into the meeting. I'm glad you sat there. I'm going to follow your recommendation. I believe we should table it. But I'm also a little perturbed about it because you felt this was necessary enough to sit in on the meeting. But I asked you 3 times in the past to come to South County Fire Authority's meetings. Twice before this council and once in person. And I asked you to come and inform South County Fire Authority that their lease on Fire Station number 2 would be up within 18 months. You came back later and said 36 months. But on 3 different occasions, you told me 18 months. It's not my job to inform South County Fire Authority that their lease is going to be up. That's your job.
Sir, I beg to differ. It's the job of this council. I've never been informed by any member of this council about that fire station. I've never been informed by any member of this council that that station would come up, that a lease would expire. So it's actually the council's action. Your statements here tonight are not accurate. I work for the council. I work for the majority of the council. As far as attending South Kalamazoo County Fire Authority meetings, I tried to in November. They don't know how to operate their Zoom. The same issue that citizens have filed formal complaints with the state, I experienced in November, and you're aware of that. I attempted to log in. I wasn't granted access. I'm not compensated by the South County Fire Authority. And as far as that station's concerned, you seem to be the only one talking about it. I've never received direction, ever, and it's never been discussed at a council meeting.
You're right, because the discussions went on between me and you.
There was never, the documentation is clear on this topic. The South County Fire Authority minutes indicate, and I believe it's May of 2020, that that topic would come up years in the future. Mm-hmm. This 18 months wasn't ever discussed. That's something Trustee Olson has brought up. But the topic on the agenda tonight is the budget. And as far as what's gone on in past years, would never give justification to continue to support something that lacks so much detail. I'll stick with my recommendation from staff. The council leads this village, and it's by majority the council leads the village. But to infer that I did something that this council hasn't directed me to is untrue and has never happened. It's further documented in the South County Fire Authority's own minutes of their conversations of their chairman of what he articulated to the board. I don't know. Mr. Olson has to explain on the other topic, but I stick to exactly what has happened and transpired.
I'm gonna remind council too, and I should have stepped in. I asked for questions of staff, not discussions or sidebars regarding things. And I will remind everybody here, and staff is correct, the council, we are the ones that make the decisions regarding the disposition of village property. It is not staff that does that. We do that, and it's by a majority vote, period. And so I'm going to ask again, is anybody, any other trustees have questions for staff regarding the recommendation to table this until more information is given?
Trustee Reister, I think that that's probably what we should do. If things are looking a little murky in their information, I think we need to look at it further and maybe get some clarification from their board and so forth. So I would highly recommend that we follow the suggestion of the manager.
Are you going to make that a motion to table this?
I will be happy to do that. I move that we table the South County Fire Authority budget recommendation until further notice.
Trustee Olson, I agree.
Is there any discussion on this? We'll take a roll call vote, Jim, please.
Roll call vote on tabling the South Kalamazoo County Fire Authority budget. Trustee Merrill.
Support.
Trustee Holmes.
Yes.
Trustee Wagner.
Yes.
Trustee Reister.
Yes.
Trustee Olson.
Yes.
President Pro Temp Keller.
Yes. Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll have the village manager's report.
Sure.
Mr. Mallory?
Yes, sir. On, hopefully most of you have seen downtown, our streetlights are getting put in place.
Where are they in place right now?
There's quite a bit on,
I'm
on,
happy for you.
on Prairie Street. They also today have most of the Prairie Street lights wired as you go by them up top. Now each one was reconfigured internally at outlets, so there can be power individually to those lights. And hopefully here by the end of the year, they'll be up and operating. But certainly it is adding to the look, we believe, and some of the comments that we've received with them being painted black and in the new look. So we know that with weather, it looks good the rest of this week, and we anticipate them being in town all week. Again, we tomorrow we had a good suggestion from a citizen on the four-way stops where the barrels are in town. We're going to have reflective tape, MDOT tape put on the edges so they stick out more, so that will be completed tomorrow. We had to order the tape, and it was supposed to arrive at the store tonight and picking it up tomorrow morning. Some questions have come forth, and I'll call around Liberty Lane. There's areas of the sidewalk that have a small 3 to 4 inch step down. We've placed barrels in those areas right now, but the final product will have a backless bench there that environmentally will draw attention to those areas. So, but we did put, there'll be plastic barrels through the winter until we make sure those benches are in place. Like to relay story. Mr. Lee and I went to Roxy's, a new restaurant in the community, and we were sitting there by ourselves in the corner talking, and had a couple I hadn't met in person, and come to find out we had emailed a couple times, but they're retired, and their grandchildren go to our school district, and they wanted to live in the area that their grandchildren are. We're from the Midland area, and what drew them to the village of Vicksburg was the downtown project. Midland a few years ago went through this similar, and some of the comments they had were about that process in Midland, but they're really looking forward to the park and the heat source down there. And it was just nice. It happens on a regular basis for Alex and I, the positive comments, but wanted to relay that specific one, most recent, to you. I'll pause there for any questions council members might have.
Yeah, Jim, just one. With the streetlights, you mentioned that we're getting those outlets retrofit onto those. Are we looking to expand our Christmas and other holiday decorations with that?
Help me out, you mean extend as in?
Like adding like lit wreaths
Oh,
or
well,
things like
yes.
that?
I didn't know if you meant like extending the Christmas season to get it all
Yeah.
lit up in January and February.
I'm good with 11 months of Christmas.
Yeah, some of the lights had to have strings between them. Some
Yep.
were fitted already for the power outlets, but But to have them all consistent, absolutely, that's,
They're convenience outlets, yeah.
Oh, yeah, those, I think they're gonna be great.
yeah.
That's a good move.
Yeah, and that good, just remind everyone, there'll also be like phone charging stations downtown and that, once the final product is all done, so.
Yeah, the new poles that are going at Oswald Park will have those convenience outlet, as well for the LED lights.
Where will they be on the,
In the bump out areas, like around Liberty Lane and then down in mid-block of Prairie Street.
Okay.
The bump out on the side of the Hideaway in China 1, there'll
Okay.
be charging stations there. And those bump outs will have, in front of the Hideaway, don't hold me to the exact number, I think it's 5 48-inch tables that have seating for 4 and 1 larger table for seating for 6. And then Liberty Lane, the wider, lower 48-inch tables on the east side, so Liberty Lane East, that larger bump out, and then there'll be cafe tables on Liberty Lane West side. Those are the stand-up ones without the fixed chairs.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Jim, any update on traffic lights, when those might be
I've
up?
been told hopefully by the end of January. So
There was, I think, some discussion about putting temporary tape down for like identification of handicap parking and whatnot. Is that still in the works?
it wasn't holding on there. We're going to follow up on that, but it wasn't due to the weather. Okay. On we know of the recent passing away of a key staff member out at Angels, and that set back. So in looking at the upcoming council meetings, one January 3rd, January 7th, January 17th, they'll have a work session, which will be the audit presentation at 6 o'clock or 6:30. We're just looking at the timing, how much time it will take, with the regular council meeting at 7 p.m. That those meetings were filled up, so we moved the golf presentation to February 7th, much like we did tonight. That will be a remote-in situation. So I just wanted you to be aware we were originally planning for it to be tonight, but with the passing of Carlotta a couple weeks ago.
I do have a question about Angels Crossing. I understand that our pro has retired. Is that correct?
Maybe I'd call it right now semi-retired, because he's working now, and as I last was aware, he'll make himself available 1 or 2 days a week. But Renaissance Golf already has a person in place to continue operations next year, and Dave will probably be there at the start of the season for a transition period.
Okay, good. That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And the chef will be back, Chef Ralph will be back, and the maintenance crew will all be back.
I've had some very good comments about the chef.
Excellent. And then on the meeting dates, we were going to list the meeting dates as traditionally has been done, unless we hear different from the council. The first and third Mondays of the month are council meetings. The second Mondays, planning commission. The fourth is Parks and Rec. We do have the only exception to that is traditionally we have gone in April due to the local spring break. So in April, it would be the 3rd and 4th, and we add that because we're in budget season at that point. So the April meeting, the first Monday is April 4th. We would not have a meeting April 4th because of the traditional school spring break. The council meetings would be the 18th and 25th of April, with the planning commission on the 11th. And then the Parks and Rec can be held a different night of the week, but it's. But again, we have it continuing that July, August, and September would be the third Monday of the month, meeting once a month.
July, August.
It would be the third Monday of the month.
Jim, do you need a motion to support that?
Yes,
moving
if
for
we get a
2022?
motion and a
Okay.
support and a voice vote, then we'll go ahead and post those dates.
Can I have a motion, please, as such?
Trustee Wagner, I will move to approve the 2022 meeting dates as suggested.
Reister, support.
Is there any discussion on that? Everybody keep in mind that April, it'll be the 17th and the 25th,
No, 18.
or 18th and the, 18th and the 25th. Okay, we'll do a voice vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Looks like it's it for you.
I was hoping so. I turned over my page. All of a sudden, I got a little nervous looking for it. So, yes, sir. That's it. Unless there's any other questions.
Congratulations on a prosperous 2021 for the village. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you.
looking forward to the audit presentation. We'll certainly have some good news to report.
Okay, thanks, Jim. We'll move on to committee reports. South County Fire Authority, Denny.
Yeah, we had our meeting on the 15th. Everything's been pretty much normal runs, everything else. But there was one big event. South County Fire Authority assisted at the fertilizer plant just south of Schoolcraft, Flowerfield Road area. They had an explosion and fire. We backed up Fabus Township and that for 2 to 3 hours with a total of 7 firefighters. We do have mutual aid with several departments in the area. There was a big discussion on equipment coming up over the next few years. We're looking over the next few years, kicking out in excess of $1 million for new equipment. Next year, we have to replace a truck. In 2 years, we'll be replacing a tanker truck. The one that we're looking at for next year, initial cost was $350,000 because of shipping delays, chips sitting in the middle of the Pacific, everything else. There's been roughly a 15% jump in the last 30 days in the costs for these new trucks. If we put an order in today, we may not get that truck for 2 years. So the faster we can get orders in and get our budgets and that straightened around, then the faster we can get this done. In the budget for next year, that we're going to be replacing 11 radios, and we've already spent $50,000 for replacement for the jaws of life. Instead of the hydraulics, we've now gone to battery operated, and they are just as efficient. The really good news that's come out of everything lately, we've been recognized, Kalamazoo County's been recognized in the state of Michigan. We have the quickest response time in the state for responding to heart attacks. And the faster we respond, the faster we get to the patient, the faster we get them to the hospital and get them aid. The survival rate is much better. So that came down from our county health director. Basically, that's about it for the moment.
Okay, thanks, Denny.
Yep.
South County Sewer and Water Authority, we have not met since our last council meeting, other than I'll state again that the administrator has retired as of last Friday. She is Ms. Chapman. She is now, I think, moving out to Arizona to live off the grid. So that's all there is for that. Tree Committee.
Yeah, our last meeting, Our last meeting, we met and turned in all of the streets that we had gone down and checked on the trees. And so we're having that put together now, into compiled and so forth, and we're meeting January 4th to go over that, and hopefully soon to have something to bring to the council. So that's our next step.
May I ask a question, Gail?
Sure.
This got brought up to me by a couple of citizens. The trees that we're looking at, are these all on public land, or are we looking at some possibly on private land that need to be replaced?
Public land.
Just all, so in other words, between the sidewalk and
Yes.
the road? Okay.
Correct.
Or so many feet in?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, cats. Trustee Olson?
Okay. Sawyer Duncan. He's a Vicksburg physical education teacher. He's working with Bike Friendly Kalamazoo. Bike education. He's working for bike education in the elementary schools throughout Kalamazoo County and including Vicksburg, teaching first and second graders, kindergartners, the rules of bike safety. So, I asked about U Avenue or US 131 from U Avenue to the county line. The way I understood it, that was supposed to be done this next year. That's now been set back until 2023 to 2024. That project, they reevaluated it, and believe it or not, they're going to save money on it. The initial cost for that from U Avenue up where the furniture store is at there, through Schoolcraft all the way to the county line, was supposed to cost $51 million. It's now going to cost $39 million. So we're going to save $12 million. So we can build 2 more roundabouts in the state. 2024 to 26, M43 West Main through downtown Kalamazoo to the Van Buren County line. Miller Road, Sprinkle Road to 35th Street. At some point, we're going to run into these, I can tell you. Discussion's been about the shooting at the bus station. Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Department, Kalamazoo City PD, no longer provides security there. That is being provided by a local security company. They talked about the shooting down there, and we have lost several drivers over that incident. One driver grabbed a injured person, got them into their bus, and took them by bus to the hospital instead of waiting for emergency personnel. Within 15 minutes of the shooting, someone was on the phone and chaplains were brought in. I know Ken Hovenkamp is one of the ones from Schoolcraft Township who works with the fire departments and the police departments. And I learned that when Ken was on South County Fire Authority. Police response to that shooting was within 2 minutes. That's pretty much unheard of, but in the heart of downtown Kalamazoo. Portage Road, if you didn't know, this weekend was temporarily closed. A walkover bridge was put over Portage Road from the main Pfizer plant to the west side construction. I-94, Portage Road at I-94 was finally closed again because they had to put the new beams in place. The original beams were deemed unfit, bad, whatever you want to call it, but they found flaws in it, so they decided to hold up. So if you had to go to Kalamazoo this weekend, there's a $50,000, MDOT grant for Washington Street Bridge in Augusta. Through CATS and the Village of Augusta, they've received an $830,000 grant. Lastly, there are 75 projects that are going to come up in the next couple of years through MDOT City, Kalamazoo County. And they total $171.5+ million. That's quite a sum of cash, but I want you to think about this too, is that 30% of that is just going to Pawpaw. Pawpaw is going to rip out their bridge and put in 3 roundabouts, 2 right at I-94, and as you go down the road a couple of miles, heading towards Lawton, there's a 5-way intersection. That's going to be ripped out, and a roundabout will be put in there. So, $50 million plus for that project. Personally, I think if they repair the bridge and install a couple of new stoplights, they'd be a lot better off. But I go through that intersection all the time. My daughter lives out there, and I look at that and shake my head. But I'm not the powers that be. So that's it for cats.
Thank you, Danny. Okay, at this time, we'll have trustees' time. Trustee Merrill.
Have a happy holiday, nothing to add.
Trustee Holmes.
I love you, Julie. I really do. I would like to first thank the businesses that participated in Christmas in the Village. And then also the pub crawl was a lot of fun, a whole lot of fun. And I'd also like to thank Mr. Mike Fredericks for expanding his company party to basically the general village as a whole. It was a really fun day. After all we've been through, the last almost 2 years, to have an experience where you just had so much, the weather wasn't that great, but so many people came out and at different times of the day. Hats off to Alex Lee. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Chief Sanderson, team did a great job as usual, being out on the streets. So again, I just wanted to acknowledge that. I think since we missed it last year, it was just so neat to just feel that level of participation that was out there. And I'd like to echo Julie's comments. Merry Christmas to everyone.
Trustee Reister.
I had a great time during the Christmas in the Village, and even though it was really cold, and I mean, it was really cold, and but we went to all the different places, and I really would like to thank the public for coming out, because the weather was really awful. But the one thing that happened was about 15 minutes before the parade started, the wind went down. It was like this miraculous thing happening. But and the floats this year were absolutely stunning. It's just really fun to be in a small little community, because what we did here, you can't do in a big community. And so there's just all this, Scott was down there just telling people where to go, and it was just a lot of fun. Even though it was so cold, it was wonderful. And also, I'm very excited about this historic designation. I had an opportunity to speak with her when she was walking around. I happened to see her outside. So I went out and she asked me some questions, and I went in and got a picture that I had and so forth, and a map that I had. And so she was very delightful to talk with. And so I'm really looking forward to this. I can't see where they can deny us. So, and Merry Christmas to everybody.
Trustee Wagner.
First things first, thank you to Roxy's for moving into town, because I bought my staff lunch last week, and apologize for the cough. It's nothing serious, I promise. But the food was excellent. The service was warm. I mean, they even threw in some extra condiments and things like that, because I said I was taking it back to the office, not to home. So they're like, well, you got to get your hot sauce and your syrup and things. So threw it right in, and it was just really friendly, warm, and inviting. Great food. Definitely going to be going back. So thank you for investing in Vicksburg and making us your home. Christmas in the Village, I learned to avoid Jim or you end up on Facebook Live. Yes. Anytime it's an important event, you're going to be there, so.
I tried to run away. I didn't get away.
Yeah, you couldn't get away. He was running down the street to get you, Gail. But it was really, really great to see the representation that we had. So I know that took a lot of work. That didn't just happen. We got, representatives, we got local news officials, and other figures from all across Southwest Michigan and the state. And that's something really neat to see those type of people in Vicksburg, excited to be in Vicksburg and happy to be a part of what we're doing. I mean, that really bodes well, and it's a great thing to see for a community of our size. And we're really punching above our weight class when it comes to putting on events and things like that for the people who live here. So that was really great to see, and I hope everyone has happy holidays and Happy New Year. That's it for me.
Trustee Olson.
I want to wish everybody Merry Christmas. This time of the year is always kind of sad for me. 17 years ago Saturday, a young woman up in Sparta, Michigan was murdered by her husband. And her nude body was taken out to Pearson Road and US 131 and laid alongside the interstate. All the time that this person did this, killed his wife, loaded her body in the van, took her out and dumped her off like a piece of trash. He had his 18-month-old son in the van with him. 17 years ago Saturday, I led the ground search to try and find Julia Dawson. I worked on the Mary Land search out of Marshall. I worked on the Venus Stewart search out of Colon. I got to know the parents of these people and everything else. The biggest thing I saw was small town America stepping up and trying to help out. 300 plus people showed up for that search for Julia. We were going to come back the next day. We didn't find her. And we were going to hit the river with canoes and boats. And we had a freak snowstorm and dumped over a foot of snow up there. It was January 3rd when she was finally found. I'm a big, tough SOB at times. But I can't tell an 18-month-old and a 5-year-old that their mother is not coming home for Christmas. I saw the best and the worst that this country has. I've been to Katrina. I took 2 loads down there. I was in New York City for the rededication of the Statue of Liberty. I've been to New York City for Times Square on New Year's Eve. I've been in Detroit for the World Series, and which sounds great until you see the riots. I've been to Detroit for Devil's Night, where there's 368 arson fires in one night. Once again, I've seen the best and the worst that this country can give. And this time of the year, I think about Julia and her kids. So thanks for letting me reminisce.
Thanks, Denny. Appreciate that. I guess I'll take the president's time. It's, I'm pinch hitting, but
That's who you are,
not tonight. I'm pinch hitting. So I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. I'd like to give my thanks to the staff and the council and the department heads and all the workers for all the hard work that everybody puts in all year long. I also want to appreciate everything that was done at the Christmas in the Village. I was physically down there, but probably most people wouldn't have known who I was except for Councilman Trustee Olson. He saw me as I was racing back to my vehicle. I was ringing Salvation Army bell at Family Fair, dressed up as somebody else. So let's just put it that way. And I can say that we talk about the generosity of this community. It was amazing how the people, when they'd walk in the store and they'd immediately see me and they'd get a big smile on their face, and all of a sudden a $5 bill or a $10 bill would come out and go in the kettle. And that was awesome. And I made sure that candy canes were there for the kids. So I took everything off for the most part because I didn't want kids to be confused when I went to watch the parade with my family, but I still had the coat and the hat on because it was, as Gail said, it got really cold, so sweatpants and a t-shirt weren't going to cut it. So anyways, that's it. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, everybody. I'd like to entertain a motion to close the meeting.
No, you do it.
So moved.
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.